The parking lot was empty. The sodium light buzzed overhead, and then he saw her, 7 years old, sitting on a concrete barrier in the cold, holding a paper bag like it was the only thing she owned in the world. He was the last man you'd expect to stop. 6'2", leather cut, scar from ear to jaw, a Hell's Angels enforcer who made grown men step aside on the sidewalk. He crouched down to her level, and she looked at him with those river-colored eyes and said the 7 words that would change everything. "Do you know anyone who wants a daughter?" He didn't have an answer, but he couldn't walk away. Cole Maddox had spent 18 years learning how to make a room go quiet just by walking into it. It wasn't something he practiced or planned. It was something that happened naturally, like weather, like the way a sky darkens before a storm and people sense the pressure dropping even before the first cloud rolls in. He was 6'2", 230 pounds, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved out of hardwood and a scar running from his left ear to the corner of his mouth. A reminder from a debt collector who had made the mistake of thinking Cole worked alone. The patch on his back said everything that needed to be said about who he was and where he stood in the world. Bakersfield, California, was not a gentle city. It sat at the southern end of the San Joaquin Valley, cradled between oil fields and almond groves, where the summer heat cracked concrete and the Santa Ana winds carried dust from places no one ever bothered to name. It was a city built on hard work and harder luck, where the bars stayed open late and the churches stayed open early, and most people fell somewhere in between. Cole had grown up here, in a 2-bedroom house off Union Avenue, where the air always smelled like motor oil and his father's cigarettes. He had never once considered leaving. It was a Tuesday in late October when everything changed, though Cole wouldn't understand that until later, the way you never recognize a turning point until you're already on the other side of it. The night had been unremarkable. 2 beers at the Rusty Anchor Tavern, a squat wood-paneled bar on the edge of an industrial strip that the club used as a meeting point, followed by a conversation with Ray Tucker about a parts shipment coming down from Fresno. Then the long ride back to his garage apartment on Chester Avenue. He took the back route out of habit, winding through the parking lot behind the East Side Grocery, a shortcut that shaved maybe 40 seconds off the trip and had no other justification. That was when he saw her. She was sitting on a concrete parking barrier, the kind painted yellow and worn smooth by years of bumpers and weather. She was small, impossibly small it seemed to him, wearing a pink sweatshirt with a cartoon rabbit on the front, jeans that were dirty at the knees, and sneakers with Velcro straps that had seen better days. One of the straps was unhooked and hanging loose. She was holding a brown paper bag against her chest, like it was the most important thing she owned, and she was staring at the ground with the focused, deliberate expression of a child who has decided that if she concentrates hard enough, the world might rearrange itself into something more manageable. Cole killed the engine. He sat on his bike for a long moment, watching her. The parking lot was empty, except for a dumpster, a shopping cart with a broken wheel, and the orange glow of a sodium light buzzing overhead. It was past 9 o'clock. The temperature had dropped to somewhere in the low 50s, and the wind coming off the valley floor had teeth in it. She had no jacket. He got off the bike. The sound of his boots on asphalt made her look up, and for a moment neither of them moved. He expected fear. Most people, grown adults, showed some trace of fear when he appeared out of the dark. But the girl looked at him with large, serious eyes the color of river water, and she did not flinch. She just looked at him the way children sometimes look at things they are trying very hard to understand. "You lost?" he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended, scraped low by years of too many nights and too little sleep. She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "I know where I am." "Where are your parents?" She looked down at the paper bag in her lap. "My mom left," she said. "She said she was going to the store. That was a long time ago." Cole looked around the parking lot again, as if expecting someone, anyone, to materialize and take responsibility. The lot remained empty. The sodium light buzzed faintly above them. "How long ago?" he asked. She thought about it with the gravity of someone consulting an internal record. "Before it got dark," she said. "So a long time." He crouched down, so he was at eye level with her. This close, he could see that her eyes were red-rimmed, not from crying exactly, but from the particular exhaustion of a child who has been holding herself together for too long. There were faint traces of dried salt on her cheeks. She had cried at some point and then stopped, and decided to be practical about things. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she said. "Lily." He repeated it without meaning to. "Okay. My name's Cole." She studied him, the scar, the leather cut, the patches, with the same careful expression she'd had before. Then she said, in a voice that was entirely calm and entirely serious, "Do you know anyone who wants a daughter?" The question landed somewhere in the center of his chest, in a place he hadn't known still existed. He didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure he could. "Why do you ask that?" he finally said. She hugged the paper bag a little tighter. "Because I need someone to want me," she said, "and I thought maybe you might know somebody." Cole Maddox had been in the presence of violence since he was 16 years old. He had stood in rooms where men decided things with their fists and their silence, where loyalty was the only currency that mattered, and weakness was the one thing no one could afford. He had learned a long time ago to keep his face still and his thoughts buried. But sitting on his heels in a cold parking lot in Bakersfield, looking at a 7-year-old girl who was asking the most impossible and most honest question he had ever heard, Cole Maddox felt something shift inside him, quiet and irreversible, like a key turning in a lock that hadn't been opened in years. He didn't know it yet, but nothing after this night would be the same. He didn't call the police right away. He told himself it was because he needed to think, but the truth was simpler and harder to admit. He didn't want to leave her alone in that parking lot, not even for the few minutes it would take to make a call. Something about the deliberate calm she was maintaining made him reluctant to shatter it before he had to. Instead, he took off his leather cut, the vest with all its patches, the one that meant everything in certain parts of Bakersfield, and draped it over her shoulders. It was enormous on her, hanging nearly to her knees, the patches and pins catching the orange light. She looked up at him with those serious eyes, surprised by the warmth of it. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you something hot to eat." There was a 24-hour diner 2 blocks away called Loretta's, a place that smelled like coffee and fry oil and had booths with cracked vinyl seats patched with electrical tape. Cole had been going there since he was a teenager. Loretta herself had died 8 years ago, but her daughter Sandra kept the place running with the same no questions, no judgment policy that had made it a neighborhood institution. He walked his bike alongside him, Lily keeping pace at his elbow, the leather vest wrapped around her like a cape. She didn't speak on the way there. She seemed to be conserving her energy for something, the way people do when they know a long road is still ahead. At Loretta's, he ordered her a grilled cheese sandwich, a bowl of tomato soup and a glass of milk. She ate with methodical seriousness, both hands on the spoon, not wasting anything. Cole drank coffee and watched her and tried to organize his thoughts. She was 7 years old. She told him this when he asked, holding up 7 fingers as confirmation. Her name was Lily. Her mother's name was Tara. They had been living in a motel on Niles Street, one of the extended stay places that rented by the week and didn't ask too many questions. Tara had told Lily to wait by the grocery store while she ran a quick errand. That had been at 6:30 in the evening. "Does your mom do that a lot?" Cole asked. "Leave you to wait?" Lily considered this carefully, with the measured honesty of a child who has not yet learned to soften the truth for other people's comfort. "Sometimes," she said, "but she always comes back before dark." "Do you have any other family? Grandparents, an aunt or uncle?" "I had a grandma," she said. "But she died. Mom said she went to be with the stars." She paused. "I don't know about any aunts." Cole wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. Outside, a truck rolled down Chester Avenue, its headlights sweeping across the window. "Is there anything in that bag?" he asked, nodding toward the paper sack she'd set on the seat beside her. She opened it carefully and showed him the contents with the precision of someone taking inventory. A change of clothes, a small t-shirt and a pair of leggings, rolled into a tight ball, a toothbrush, a worn paperback picture book about a dog, and a photograph. She held up the photograph last, with a particular care that told him it was the most valuable thing she owned. It was a picture of a woman, young, pretty in a tired way, with Lily's same river-colored eyes, holding a baby. The woman was smiling at the camera, with the kind of smile that had something desperate underneath it. "That's my mom and me," Lily said, "when I was a baby." Cole nodded. He didn't trust himself to say anything about the photograph. He called Bakersfield PD at 10:40, sitting outside Loretta's while Lily finished her milk inside. He gave the dispatcher the location, the girl's name, what she'd told him. A unit would be there within 20 minutes. Cole told himself this was the right thing, the only sensible thing, and went back inside. Lily was looking at the picture book when he sat down, tracing the illustrations with one finger. She didn't look up immediately. "Are you going to call someone?" she asked. "I already did," he said. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. She kept her eyes on the book. When the patrol car arrived, the officer, a young man named Derek Walsh, barely 30, with the careful, neutral expression of someone who has managed this situation before, knelt beside Lily and spoke to her gently. Lily answered his questions politely and completely. She did not cry. Cole stood near the door and watched. Before they took her out to the car, Lily turned back to Cole. She was still wearing his leather cut over her pink sweatshirt. She began to shrug it off. "Keep it," he said, before he could think about why. She looked at him for a moment. "Will you visit me?" she asked. Cole's jaw tightened. "I don't know how that works," he said. "Okay," she said. She seemed to accept this with the same quiet practicality she'd shown about everything else, as if she had long ago learned that uncertainty was not the same as no. He watched the patrol car pull away. He stood in the parking lot of Loretta's diner for a long time after the taillights disappeared, his hands in his pockets and the cold October wind moving through the space where his cut had been. He found out the next day through a contact at Bakersfield PD, a man named Briggs, who owed Cole a favor he'd never fully repaid, that Lily had been placed in emergency foster care, that Tara Calloway had a history with Child Protective Services, that there was a case file, that Lily had no documented relatives. Cole sat with this information in his garage apartment and turned it over in his mind like something heavy, something he couldn't quite find a comfortable grip on. He told himself it wasn't his problem. He told himself this clearly and directly, the way he handled everything, without sentiment and without hesitation. He told himself this for 3 days. On the 4th day, he called Kern County Child Protective Services and asked for someone who could tell him how a person went about becoming an approved visitor for a child in their care. Donna Harper was a social worker with Kern County CPS, and she had been one for 19 years. She was 52, compact, with silver-streaked hair cut short and practical, and eyes that had the quality of someone who had stopped being surprised by human beings a long time ago. Not from cynicism, but from a deep and exhausting intimacy with the full range of what people were capable of, both terrible and extraordinary. She had dealt with Cole Maddox twice before, in the distant, indirect way that a social worker sometimes intersects with peripheral figures in a child's case file. And she had found him to be, if not cooperative exactly, at least honest, which was more than she could say for a lot of people she dealt with. When he showed up at her office on a Thursday morning, in a clean shirt, no leather cut, which she noted, she listened to what he had to say without interrupting. "I want to know how she's doing," he said. "You're not family," Donna said. "I know that. You don't have any legal standing in this case. I know that too." She studied him across her desk. Behind her, a window looked out onto a parking structure. The fluorescent light above them buzzed faintly, the way they always did in government buildings, like the sound of someone thinking too hard. "She asked about you," Donna said finally, "in her intake interview. She mentioned the man from the parking lot. She said you gave her your jacket." Cole said nothing. "She's in a placement on the north side," Donna continued. "It's a good home, experienced foster parents. She's safe." She paused deliberately. "For now." What does "for now" mean? Donna laced her fingers together on the desk. "It means the system works the way it works, Mr. Maddox. She'll be assessed. Her mother's situation will be evaluated. There's a process. And if the mother doesn't come back, then there's a different process." Cole leaned forward slightly. "I want to see her." "That's not something I can arrange informally." "Then tell me what I have to do to arrange it formally." Donna looked at him for a long moment. In 19 years of social work, she had learned to read people the way some people read weather, not by individual signs, but by the whole atmosphere of a person, the pressure and temperature and particular quality of the light. What she read in Cole Maddox was something she hadn't expected to find there. He wasn't present because of guilt, or because he wanted credit, or because Lily represented some problem he needed to resolve cleanly. He was there because of something less comfortable and more real than any of those things. "You'd have to apply for approved visitor status," she said. "Background check, home visit, character references." Cole's expression didn't change. "Okay," he said. "Mr. Maddox." She chose her words carefully. "A background check for someone in your position. I know what it'll show," he said. "Do it anyway." She did. The check came back with 2 prior arrests. One for aggravated assault, charges eventually reduced, and one for possession with intent that had been plea bargained down to a lesser charge. No convictions that constituted an automatic bar under California Family Code. Donna brought the file to her supervisor, Gregory Holt, who had a cautious disposition and a deep respect for process, and who looked at the file over his reading glasses with the expression of someone calculating odds. "He's a Hells Angels enforcer," Gregory said. "He is," Donna said. "You want to recommend approved visitor status for a child in our care to a Hells Angels enforcer. I want to present the case and let you decide," she said carefully. Gregory was quiet for a moment. "What's your read?" Donna thought about the man who had sat across from her desk with clean hands and a clean shirt, and asked what he needed to do to arrange things formally, without hedging or deflection. "I think he's serious," she said, "and I think she needs someone who is." Meanwhile, Cole was navigating a different kind of pressure. The club had noticed his preoccupation. In an organization built on mutual awareness and loyalty, where everyone's business was everyone's business by design, it was impossible to pursue something new without it becoming known. Ray Tucker had mentioned it at a meeting, the way Ray mentioned most things, sideways, as if it were of no particular importance to him, though nothing Ray raised was ever of no particular importance. "Heard you've been going by the county offices," Ray said. "They were in the parking lot of the Rusty Anchor, the night air thick with the smell of asphalt and exhaust." "Just handling something," Cole said. Ray nodded slowly. He was 50, grey-bearded, with a mechanic's hands and a politician's patience. He had been in the club longer than Cole, longer than most, and he understood its machinery better than anyone. "People are asking," Ray said. "Let them ask." Ray was quiet for a moment, turning a bottle cap over in his thick fingers. "It's not a problem," he said finally. "Not yet. Just be clean about it, whatever it is." Cole looked at him. "It's a kid," he said. 7 years old. No one's going to want her." Ray turned the bottle cap over one more time, then he put it in his pocket. "Then be cleaner than clean," he said, and walked away without ceremony. The home visit was conducted by a county caseworker named Patricia, who toured Cole's garage apartment with a clipboard and a professional expression. She noted the cleanliness of the kitchen, the working smoke detector, the absence of visible weapons or controlled substances. She did not comment on the motorcycle parts stacked neatly in the corner of the living room, though she noted them on her form. She did not comment on the second bedroom, small, with a single window, empty, except for a cardboard box and an old lamp, though she noted that too. Cole had cleaned that room out the week before, without entirely understanding why. He was approved for supervised visits. The first was scheduled for a Saturday morning at a county-designated family center, a neutral space with toys and low tables and large windows that let the morning light come in warm and even. Cole arrived 10 minutes early and sat in a plastic chair in the waiting area, turning his helmet over in his hands, trying to remember the last time he had been genuinely nervous about anything. When Lily walked in with the foster placement supervisor, a tired-looking woman named Ruth, she stopped when she saw him. Then she walked across the room, climbed up into the chair beside his, and said, with the quiet certainty of someone confirming something they always knew, "I knew you'd come." Cole looked at her. She was wearing a green sweater and clean jeans and new sneakers. Someone had done her hair in 2 braids. She looked, he thought, like a child who was being well cared for in all the ways that were easy to measure and was still waiting for something that was harder to provide. "I told you I didn't know how it worked," he said. "I know," she said, "but I knew anyway." He didn't know what to say to that, so instead he said, "How are you doing?" "Okay," she said. She thought about it honestly. "The people are nice, but I don't think they have enough time." "What do you mean?" She picked at a thread on her sweater. "They have a lot of kids," she said, "so it's hard to have enough time for everybody. I understand that." She said this last part with a gravity that no 7-year-old should have needed to develop. Cole felt something tighten in his chest that he did not yet have a name for. "I've been thinking about what you asked me," he said. "In the parking lot." Lily looked at him carefully. The way she looked at everything, measuring, precise, waiting. "About whether I knew anyone who wanted a daughter." She was very still. "I'm working on it," he said. Her expression stayed serious for a moment, and then, for the first time he had seen, she smiled. It was a small smile, private and genuine, like the sun emerging briefly between clouds. "Okay," she said. "I can wait." Cole Maddox had always understood power in physical terms. It was the simplest and most honest version, the kind that left marks, that ended arguments with clarity. He had spent 2 decades in an organization that ran on that understanding, where the ability to project force was not a flaw, but a qualification. He was good at it. He had always been good at it. What he discovered in the months that followed the first supervised visit was that there was another kind of fight entirely, conducted in conference rooms and courthouses and county offices, with paperwork instead of fists and patience instead of pressure. And it was harder than anything he had ever done. Every form asked the same questions in different configurations. Every meeting required him to sit still and answer clearly and without hostility questions about his life that were designed to surface the worst version of him. He answered them all the same way, directly, without softening. He had been honest about who he was from the beginning. That was the thing he kept returning to, the thing that felt most important. He had not built a sanitized version of himself to present to Donna Harper and Patricia, the caseworker, and Gerald Sims, the court-appointed attorney who handled Lily's case and who looked at Cole over the top of his glasses with the exhausted skepticism of someone who had seen a great many things turn out to be less than they appeared. Cole had laid out exactly who he was and what he was asking for. He was a Hells Angels enforcer with 2 priors and a motorcycle and a 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood in Bakersfield. He was asking the state of California to consider him as a potential guardian for a 7-year-old girl with no family. He was not going to pretend any part of that was easy to justify. He was just going to keep showing up. "You understand," Gerald Sims said at their first meeting, "that this is an extraordinarily difficult ask." "I understand," Cole said. "The court will look at your lifestyle, your employment, your criminal history. I know. They will scrutinize your associations. I know that too." "Then why—" Gerald stopped himself, ran a hand over his thinning hair. "Why are you doing this?" Cole thought about it, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he wanted to find the right version of it, the honest one, not the one that would sound best to a lawyer. "Because she asked me a question," he said, "and I'm the only one who heard it." Gerald looked at him for a long moment. Then he wrote something on his legal pad and said, "All right. Let's talk about what this looks like." Tara Calloway had resurfaced 6 weeks after disappearing. Not in Bakersfield, but in Sacramento, where she had been hospitalized following an incident related to substance use. She was alive and enrolled in a treatment program, and her legal status with regard to Lily was complicated. She had not formally relinquished parental rights, but the combination of her history, the circumstances of the abandonment, and her current situation made reunification, according to Gerald's measured assessment, unlikely in the near term. Lily knew her mother was alive. Donna Harper had told her, in the careful language people use with children, when the truth is real but painful. Lily had asked if she would come back. Donna had said she didn't know. Lily had been quiet for a while, and then she had asked to call Cole. He had taken the call in his apartment, sitting at the kitchen table, the late afternoon light cutting low and gold through the window. "Are you still working on it?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "Okay," she said. Then, after a pause, "I made a drawing of our house." His throat tightened. "Our house." "The one I imagine," she said. "It has a porch and a tree in the front yard. Do you like trees?" "Yeah," he said, "I like trees." "Good," she said, with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose plans are proceeding correctly. "I drew a big one." The hearing was scheduled for a Friday in February. Cole wore the same clean shirt he'd worn to Donna Harper's office, dark blue, collared, and sat beside Gerald at a table in a family court hearing room in the Kern County Superior Courthouse, a building that smelled like floor polish and old paper and the particular tension of people waiting to find out what would happen to their lives. Across from them sat Barbara Reeves, the county's family placement coordinator, and a representative from the foster agency. Judge Patricia Holt presided, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain, and the manner of someone who had long ago stopped being impressed by either performance or posturing. She read through the file with thoroughness. She asked Cole questions directly, which he answered directly. She asked about his income. He ran a legitimate motorcycle repair shop on Union Avenue, a business he'd owned for 11 years, with taxes filed and employees and a clean record with the State Business Licensing Board. She asked about his support network, his living situation, his plans for Lily's schooling. Then she asked, with the careful phrasing of a judge who has learned to be precise, about his affiliation with the Hells Angels and what steps he had taken or was willing to take to ensure Lily would not be exposed to the illegal aspects of that affiliation. Cole had discussed this with Ray Tucker 2 weeks earlier in the back room of the Rusty Anchor, in a conversation that had been quiet and entirely honest. It had ended with Ray nodding once and saying, "Then do what you have to do," without drama or resentment, which was the most generous thing Cole had ever heard Ray say. "I have stepped back from the enforcement role," Cole told Judge Holt. "I am no longer performing that function for the club. That can be verified." Judge Holt looked at him over her glasses. That's a significant concession for someone in your position, she said. She's 7 years old, Cole said. It's not a concession. It's just the right thing. The judge was quiet for a moment, making a note. Barbara Reeves spoke next. Her assessment was measured, not hostile, but cautious and grounded in legitimate concern. Cole's history, his environment, the question of long-term stability. But Donna Harper had submitted a detailed written assessment that described in the careful language of a 19-year professional what she had observed in Cole's interactions with Lily. The 7 supervised visits. A man who arrived on time, every time without exception, who sat at the low tables and read the picture book about the dog in a voice that never once sounded like it was performing, who listened to everything a 7-year-old said with a quality of attention that Donna described in her report, simply and precisely as remarkable. Lily herself had been interviewed by a court-appointed child advocate named Susan Park. Susan Park's report was 3 pages. On the last page, she had written, when asked what she wanted, the child stated clearly, "I want to live with Cole. He pays attention." Judge Holt set the file down. She looked across the room. "Mr. Maddox," she said, "the court has concerns about this placement that are not trivial. What you are asking for is unusual, and the circumstances of your life, past and present, are not what this court typically considers ideal." She paused. "But this court is charged with determining what serves this child's best interest. And what serves this child's best interest is not always what looks most straightforward on paper." Cole kept his hands flat on the table. His breathing was steady. "I am granting provisional guardianship," the judge said, "pending a 6-month review. Mr. Maddox will be subject to regular home visits and caseworker check-ins. The terms will be outlined in the court order." She set down her pen. "Don't make me regret this." "No, ma'am," Cole said. Gerald Sims, beside him, exhaled slowly. Cole looked straight ahead at the wall, and he felt something he couldn't remember feeling in a very long time. Not relief exactly, but something steadier than relief. Something that felt like direction. The morning Cole brought Lily home, it rained. It was the 3rd week of March, and a slow Pacific storm had come in overnight, draping Bakersfield in grey and filling the gutters with water the color of pennies. Cole had borrowed Ray's pickup truck for the occasion. His bike was obviously not suited for this, and driven to the foster placement home on the north side, where Ruth met them at the door, with Lily's 2 bags already packed and waiting in the entryway. Lily shook Ruth's hand when she said goodbye. She thanked her for the green sweater. She said she hoped things would be good. Ruth, who had been doing foster coordination for 11 years and had made a professional decision long ago not to get attached, found herself having to look at a point on the wall just above Lily's head when she said goodbye. In the truck, Lily sat with her paper bag held in her lap, the same one from the parking lot, supplemented now with additional things, and watched the rain-wet streets of Bakersfield slide past the window as Cole drove. "Is the tree there?" she asked. Cole kept his eyes on the road. "I planted one," he said. "Last week. It's small, but it's there." He felt her look at him. He didn't look back, but he felt it. "You planted a tree," she said. "It's a birch," he said. "They grow fast." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said quietly, "Okay." The apartment looked different than it had 6 months ago. Not unrecognizable. It was still a converted garage space on Chester Avenue, still smelled faintly of motor oil and coffee, still had the motorcycle parts in the corner of the living room, though tidied now and pushed further back. But the second bedroom was no longer empty. Cole had painted it yellow. Not a sharp yellow, but a soft one, the color of afternoon sun, and bought a bed frame and a desk from a second-hand store on Truxton Avenue. He had put up a shelf. He had hung a peg on the wall for her backpack. He had not known how to furnish the room of a 7-year-old girl. He had gone to Donna Harper and asked her with the same directness with which he approached everything, and she had given him a list. He had followed it. When Lily walked into the room, she stood in the doorway for a moment, one hand on the frame, taking it in. Cole stood behind her in the hall, watching her face. "Yellow," she said. "You can change it if you want," he said. "When you're older, or sooner. Whatever you decide." She walked to the window and looked out at the backyard, a small square of concrete with a patch of grass at the far end, and at the fence, visible even through the rain, a thin white birch sapling with its bark still pale and new. She pressed her hand flat against the cold glass. "It's real," she said. "It's real," he said. She turned around and looked at him. This man who was too large for the small room, standing in the doorway of a yellow bedroom he had painted because someone told him what color to use, who had planted a tree in the rain because she had drawn one in a picture she'd never shown him. "Okay," she said for the third time that morning. It seemed to be he was learning, the way she confirmed things that mattered. The first months were not easy, and he had not expected them to be. He had anticipated the practical challenges, the school enrollment, the lunch boxes, the parent-teacher conferences where he sat in small chairs and listened to Ms. Garrett describe Lily's progress with the solemn attention of a man receiving important briefings. He had expected to be tired in a new way, a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion and everything to do with the sustained, vigilant effort of being present for another person without exception, every single day. What he had not fully anticipated was how much she would teach him. She asked questions constantly, not the difficult, unanswerable questions adults ask themselves, but the specific, immediate questions of a child discovering that the world is large and full of things that require explanation. Why do birds fly south? What happens to leaves in winter? Why do some people have a lot of money and some people have a little? He answered what he could honestly, looked up what he couldn't and said, "I don't know," for the rest, which she accepted without judgment. She was serious but not solemn. She had a sense of humor that was dry and unexpected. She would say something deadpan and then look at him sideways to see if he'd caught it, and when he had, she would allow herself a small, satisfied smile. She was stubborn in the particular way of children who have learned early not to rely on others, and this required patience from him. The patience to let her do things her own way, to fail sometimes, to figure it out, to ask for help only when she decided she was ready to ask for it. He gave her that patience. He had not known he had it to give. He was not a perfect guardian. He burned dinner more than once. He forgot twice to sign school forms that needed signing before the deadline. There was a week in April when a legitimate business matter at the shop pulled his attention sideways, and he could see Lily registering his distraction with those careful eyes, recalibrating quietly. And it was this, that small private adjustment she made, the one she had been making her whole life, that sharpened him back to focus faster than anything else could have. He was not going to be another thing she had to accommodate. He was going to be the thing that stayed fixed. Donna Harper came for the monthly visits and noted in her careful professional language what she observed. A child who was sleeping, eating, attending school consistently. A child whose affect had shifted, who was less guarded, less self-contained, less preoccupied with the private labor of managing her own survival. A child who, when asked how things were at home, answered with the kind of specificity that indicated genuine experience. "He makes eggs for breakfast, and he lets me put in the cheese. He doesn't like cartoons, but he watches them anyway. We went to the library on Saturday. He read the dog book with me, even though he'd never read it before. At the 3-month review, Judge Holt read Donna's report and said, without looking up from the page, 'Continue.' At the 6-month review, she extended the guardianship to permanent, with a finality that felt like something settling into its right place. Ray Tucker came by the apartment on a Sunday in September, unannounced but not unexpected. He brought 2 coffees from the gas station in paper cups and sat on the steps of the porch, The porch Cole had built in August, a small wood platform with 2 steps and a railing that was perhaps not perfectly level, but was solid and would not give, and watched the birch tree in the yard, which had grown noticeably over 6 months, its leaves beginning now to yellow at the edges with the first suggestion of fall. Lily was inside, doing homework at the kitchen table. "You look different," Ray said, handing Cole a coffee. "How do I look?" Cole asked. Ray thought about it with the same deliberate patience he brought to everything. "Like you know what you're doing," he said. Cole drank his coffee. "The guys ask about you," Ray said. "Nobody's said a word against it, even the ones who thought you'd lost your mind." Cole nodded slowly. "Maybe I did," he said. Ray turned the paper cup in his hands. "You did," he said, "just in the right direction." From inside the apartment, they could hear the sound of Lily moving around in the kitchen, the particular small sounds of a child doing her own things, making her own small gravity in a space. Cole listened to it the way a person listens to rain on a roof, without wanting it to stop. "She good?" Ray asked. "She's good," Cole said. Ray nodded, satisfied. He finished his coffee and stood, creaking at the knees the way he always did now, and looked at the birch tree one more time. "Planted that yourself?" "Yeah." "Birch," Ray said. "Smart choice. They come back every year." He left without ceremony the way he'd arrived. Cole sat on the uneven porch and finished his coffee in the September afternoon, listening to Bakersfield do what it always did. Traffic on Chester Avenue, a dog barking somewhere down the block, the distant grumble of a freight train moving through the valley floor toward the mountains. He heard the screen door open behind him. Lily came out and sat down on the step beside him. She had her picture book, the dog book, worn soft now from handling, tucked under one arm. She looked out at the birch tree, which caught the afternoon light and trembled slightly in a breeze. "The leaves are changing," she said. "They do that in fall," he said. "I know," she said. "Ms. Garrett explained it. Something about chlorophyll." "Chlorophyll," he confirmed. She leaned slightly against his arm, not dramatically, not making anything of it, just a small adjustment of her weight, the way a person leans against something solid when they want to feel that it's there. He did not move. They sat like that for a while, watching the birch tree in the September light. "Cole?" she said. "Yeah." She was quiet for a moment. He waited. "I'm glad I asked you," she said. He thought about that parking lot, the sodium light, the cold, the way she had looked at him without flinching and asked the question that he hadn't known until she asked it, that he needed to hear. "Me too," he said. The birch tree moved in the breeze. The afternoon light was going golden, the particular gold of California in September, and somewhere down the block the dog was barking at something that didn't matter, and the freight train was moving through the valley toward wherever freight trains go, and Lily Calloway was leaning against the arm of Cole Maddox on a porch he had built himself, and they were both, in their different ways, exactly where they were supposed to be. Family is not a thing you find. It is not given or inherited or guaranteed by blood or circumstance. It is a thing you choose, and keep choosing every ordinary day until the choosing becomes who you are. Cole Maddox had spent his life learning to be feared. What he hadn't known, what he was only now beginning to understand in the September light, with a 7-year-old girl leaning against his arm, was that there was something harder and braver and more real than being feared. It was being needed and being there.